All right, we're live. Welcome to another episode of 10 Horse Money YouTube channel on Tuesday Night Live. And man, Mark, you're one of my favorite guests. I think this is maybe your third or fourth time on here, and each time it's good to hang out with you. How you holding up, man? You had a eventful weekend for sure.
Oh, I did. I went to Tulsa for the Classic. I left on Monday, a week ago yesterday, and worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with Yamaha doing pre-Classic media with all the TV stations and radio stations there, and then worked the sports show. Sorry about that. Where did I go?
You still there? I can see you.
You can see I've lost you.
Really?
Yes, I have.
Well, if you need to click out and come back in, we can do that. I can
all
make
right,
a few
I'm gonna have to do that probably.
Okay.
Well, here comes. Hold on. I've got the coach here. She's gonna get me back there.
Yeah, I can see you and hear you loud and clear.
He can see you.
Yep, that means you can see her too.
Yeah.
See her beautiful face.
There you go.
Oh yeah, right.
You're on live, honey.
There
Say
you
hi.
go.
Say hi.
Say hi.
Hi. She's got her phone tied into her computer when one of the kids calls. It kicked us out of there. So I'm sorry. I apologize, but it was a good week. There was a lot to do. I stayed really, really busy, and then drove home on Sunday night, watching the Classic on my phone on the way home, and seeing Justin Haemner become the Classic champion was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. I didn't I personally didn't see that coming. I listened to a lot of podcasts and stuff that were talking about the Classic, and of course you got Christie was the hometown favorite, and
well, yeah, he was the big hometown favorite.
Yeah, there were several other guys that were picked to do really well, and Haemner just kind of, for me at least, he just kind of came out of nowhere, which. Hearing his story, he was on your fantasy team.
Yeah, you were.
Oh, you
good dog. For you. Good call.
You killed it then.
You
had Luke Palmer too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Had Luke Palmer, had Haemner. I did not have Christie, even though he's the hometown boy.
I'm impressed. I didn't know you had him on there. That's awesome.
I had Milliken. Milliken kind of disappointed me. Who else did I have?
I had Fajita or Koi Fajita, and yeah. I had two people in the top 25, but
right.
Milliken's the one that killed my team.
Patrick Walters killed me too. I had him picked.
I had Welcher,
and
Kyle Patrick, and Brian Schmidt. So Justin Haemner, Kyle Patrick, Brian Schmidt, Ben Milliken, and Kyle Welcher. So
yeah, that was decent.
That's not bad picking. That's
no. Kyle Welcher, he does well under pressure situations. So I don't know. But
yeah,
how you doing, Mark? Nice to see you. Man, on Tuesdays I run. We got baseball practice, so it's a heck of a night.
I bet. My son came rolling in from trap shooting practice today, and shot a 97 out of 100 in this wind, and I was like, "Hey, that's pretty good." I got a kid that's really good with that shotgun.
I did a little trap shooting a while ago with the BB gun. This is my third attempt at planting grass. We just moved out to this property, Mark, last summer. So I've got basically, I live in the middle of a 5-acre hay field, and we had grass going, and then we had a porch poured in the backyard, and they dug it all up, and it's just soil now. So I'm on my third attempt of grass seed fertilizer and straw, and we have a bumper crop of meadowlarks and doves, and they love.
You may not want to say all this on.
Well, I'll save myself here in a minute. Anyway, they love just picking through that seed or picking through that straw and getting that grass seed, and then we got a whole bunch of starlings that just showed up, and so I can't get grass to grow. So anyway, I got the BB gun out. I didn't shoot at them; I just shot above them. Okay. And,
bottle rockets, dude. Bottle rockets.
You're right, but it's so dry around here. I'm scared to catch. You got
to get the mix back from all the geese at the old place.
Oh, the
the
M80s.
M80s
Yeah,
that
the
you-
M80s. I do. I think I still got a couple of those. I had a big old paper bag full of those. They work. They definitely
That's
work.
funny.
Them
That's
stupid
funny.
birds.
And you guys may have already talked about this. Were you down at the Classic, Mark?
Oh yeah, spent the whole 9 yards there. Was there the whole week, and did a lot of media there. Did 3 episodes of live. Met tons of people, signed tons of autographs. Show was really busy. It's a really busy show. It was a good show.
Good. Do they get old after all the years you've been doing them?
No, because what's funny, when you go to the Bassmaster Classic, it's almost like a family reunion. I see people there that I've seen at previous Bassmasters Classics. It's the only place I get to see them. So I get to see a lot of people there that I know, make new friends, talk fishing, talk forward facing sonar. Here we go again. But everybody there loves fishing. So it's always good to go. It's always good to go. I enjoy it.
Well, if we didn't have forward-facing sonar, what would we talk about? I mean, the fact that the 5 out of the top 6 didn't use it. So
hell, it's amazing to me that was part of it this time. It was so good to have a regular old fishing tournament.
I was thinking today as I was on my trek up here, was this the last great Classic that it didn't dominate?
No, I don't think so. I think what you're going to find is we're going to have those situational tournaments where forward facing is less prominent than other tournaments. I think you're going to see less of forward facing on the upcoming Florida swing. And I'm not saying that's not going to be used. I'm not going to say that there's not going to be some people that do well with them, but I think you're going to see more traditional fishing in the next 2 Bassmaster Elites than what we've seen in the past. At Lake Fort, it was dominated by forward facing. But I was proud to say I had almost 28 pounds the first day, and I caught them fishing guys, just like we grew up doing, and made a money cut. So you can still compete. But the dinosaurs went extinct once, and if I don't get on the forward facing, I may go extinct this year too. So it's up to me to learn the technology and be comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with it. I catch them on it. I just don't think it's ethically right. That's the long, tall, and the short of it. We can argue this as much as you want. I can't spotlight a deer to go deer hunting, which is all we're doing. I can't use an aluminum bat in the major leagues. There's so many analogies I can go with. Golf and baseball have put limitations on technology to keep the game fair, and it's time for that to happen here. I work for one of the electronics companies. I use Lowrance stuff. That's what I use. But I don't think it's ethically right what we're doing. It takes 50 years of me honing my craft, and it throws it right out the door. For me, that hurts my feelings, because I've been able to be in the Elite Series or at the elite level for 34 straight years on my craft. The ability to adjust, the ability to catch enough fish to requalify, the ability to win, the ability to go to a classic. I've been able to do that for 34 straight years. And this is just such a game changer on how we're going to view fishing. I think what you're going to see is you're going to end up seeing some states really take a hard look at this and potentially put some restrictions on it or banning it, whatever it is. I think you'll see several states do that in the coming days.
So of the veteran elite anglers,
we hate it. Save your breath. We hate
it. Really. So it's not even a split. It's not even like 50-50. It's just,
this younger crowd has gotten very proficient with computers. They grew up with them. They play video games. They're very proficient with it. And what's happened is you can take a very young person that has no fishing experience. They're not old enough to have learned seasonal patterns. They haven't seen enough seasonal patterns to understand the changes of the seasons, and put them in there. All these high school kids, all these college kids. I was at an event the other day, and the kid that was leading the tournament broke his transducer. Well, he didn't catch a cold the next day because he didn't know seasonal pattern. They rely on the machine too much. And in the event that there is a malfunction, what are they going to do? Well, I don't even have to have a depth finder. And I know where a bass is going to position. I know where he's going to be right now on Kentucky Lake in a very late winter. I know exactly what I'm looking for. You can take me to any lake in the country and I will be able to position myself around fish because I know how fish react to a seasonal pattern. Is it good for the sport? I don't know. Is it bad for the sport? I'm seeing more negatives than anything else. You look at all the comments that are being sent to the television shows that cover the tournaments. People do not want to watch a guy looking down, not saying a word, driving around, and then making one cast when he sees a fish. People don't want to see that. They want to know why I threw that spinnerbait on the left side of that lay down tree because the wind was blowing from the left side. They want to know that. Want to know why I retrieved that bait at a specific rate, why I use a number 4 and a number 5 Colorado in a copper. They want to know those intricate things. So that's what I feel we're going to miss out on. Is technology going to move forward? Yes, it is. Everyday life, technology, something changes. It makes our life better. But has this made fishing better? I don't know. It's still too early to tell. I don't want to be a real negative Nelly on the whole subject. But again, as a professional fisherman, it is my responsibility to become adept and be able to utilize what technology is out there so that I can compete. I realize that. To continue on, I'm going to have to conform and become good with the technology. And I'm not scared of it. I use it all the time. I caught a dirty 30 on a gravel dog down in Texas with it the other day. I can catch them with it. I don't like it because it takes out all those years of experience, which has been I won't lie, it has been an advantage to me to have those years of experience, but it takes away the fundamental part of what we've used as a building block to fishing being seasonal pattern. It completely takes it away.
That's a good that answer. I like the point about the kid that broke his transducer and he was out there lost, just kind of drifting around in the nowhere.
Lost as a duck, dude. Lost as a duck.
Yeah, it's so we both have it and we use it, and I want your opinion on how you are integrating it into your fishing game, because that's been the most difficult thing for me. I've been fishing for quite a while, and I have, just like we all do, I learned a lot of fishing shallow. You'd side scan, down scan, mark a brush pile or something, and come back and just make 5-6 casts and finally find it. Triangulate, all the stuff. I'm not flasher, but certainly not too much further past that is when I started getting in the game. And it's hard for me to completely go scoping. I've done it a little bit. I mean, and I'm practicing it. I'm just like you and just like JB. I'm working on it because it's fascinating to see fish behavior. It's fascinating. One of the coolest things to me is watching shad get pushed around by stripers or bass, and the way that they come up through the bait balls. And you can see that whole, we thought that was happening and we knew that was happening, but we never really actually got to see it live time. So I'm enjoying seeing some of those kind of things. And to me, it is exciting to throw a bait and the anticipation as it's coming closer to a fish, whether he's going to take it to see what he does. But I still am drawn to the bank. I'm drawn to fishing the way that I've been fishing for, 20, 30 years. So how are you integrating that technology into your fishing game?
Well, we are creatures of habit. Bass fishermen are creatures of habit. We like to replicate those successes that we've had in previous fishing trips. So it's very hard to get away from that. That's why local anglers, when they go to their local lake, they run to that tree where they caught a 6-pounder one time, and they go down that windy bank to that point where they caught like 3 5-pounders the next trip. And then we want to replicate those successes. So it's really hard in the brain to do this. And I had a conversation with Rick Clunn last season. Rick, my hero. I won't lie. It's amazing to get to talk to your hero. But what's even more amazing is to talk to your friend that's your hero. And anytime I've ever had an issue, I've gone to Rick for advice. And I said, look, Rick, between the two of us, we have 85 years of tournament experience. A lot of gray hair there, and a lot of miles traveled. And I said, 85 years of experience between the two of us. Why aren't we dominating more? Because we have seen every scenario in the book more than once. We've even made up some scenarios and won with those scenarios. And he says it's because the younger mind is so much more open to doing something different. We have those replications. We have those reps where we did well. We did well by picking that spinnerbait up on a gut feeling versus continuing on with the crankbait. Whatever it was, we have all those experiences, and we know how to utilize those experiences to make the adjustment, the forthcoming adjustment. And it's hard for us to go completely open to some foreign type information interpretation to go forward. So with that, I took a lot of time this winter and this fall thinking about that. And so my whole look at forward facing has become a little bit different. Maybe it's rudimentary, maybe it's elementary, but it has more to do with cover. I'm looking at forward facing more at cover. And depending upon the seasonal pattern is the type of cover I'm looking for. Right now, Kentucky Lake is not coming up yet. It won't start up until April the 15th. We're still at winter pool. We've got warmer than average water temperatures. We got water temperatures. Before I left for Tulsa the other day, I filmed one of the Mark Menendez Bass TV shows, and I got in some 61, 62, 63 water over on Barkley. Were there any fish back there in those pockets in that 62-degree water? No, I didn't catch squat back there. But I caught a bunch of fish on the main lake that were ankle deep around any piece of wood I could on a 1.5. And that told me that all I really need to have was forward facing on so that I could find a piece of cover. And there was a fish laying on it. Mm-hmm. I'm using it more to discern the cover than anything else. In certain bodies of water, like highland bodies of water, I'm looking for bait. I'm not necessarily looking for the fish. I know that when I find bait at the right seasonal pattern, there's going to be some bass around somewhere, and I'm going to find those fish and see them. The one thing that I said earlier about being ethical, I've heard some tournament stories where anglers are actually just chasing bass. They see a bass, it reacts to their bait, it moves away from it, and they follow it. They follow it 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, whatever it is, and they end up catching that bass. That's just harassment in my mind. We have figured out with forward facing that the biggest population of fish live out behind us, out in the deep water. But that was their resting zone so long. Now we're harassing the hell out of them every day, 24/7. Everybody can find those fish, and those fish don't have a sanctuary anymore. Now, the one thing I will say, there have been certain tactics that I've learned on tour, one of which was bed fishing. Back in the day when I was young, Kentucky Lake was so dirty, you couldn't bed fish. You couldn't see those fish. We caught spawning fish on the bed, but we didn't realize that's exactly what that was. We couldn't see them. So when I got on the tour and I started learning my craft of bed fishing, when I saw one, guys, I thought I could catch every one of them. Well, that's not necessarily true with a bed fish. And it's not necessarily true with forward facing. I've already been to some lakes in which the fish are very, what I call radar shy. You hit them in the behind with that radar and off they go. Went and fished an event at Douglas Lake this past fall, and anytime the radar hit one in the behind, it's like he was a rocket launcher and was gone from the side of my unit in seconds. I think you will see these fish get accustomed to it to some degree. Will it be 100%? I don't know, but I'm seeing that it's already affecting the behavior of the fish now.
I'm curious. We had Brandon Perkins on here last week, and he just won the inaugural NPFL championship down on Amistad.
Along with a couple of other ones he's already won. Brandon's a great fisherman.
He's kind of good on the Tennessee River.
He is. He's a really solid bass angler. Yes, sir.
Good, excellent guy too. Really good dude. Pickwick Perkins. Anyway, we were talking about how, just like what you said, how the fish are in the wintertime, they've had a sanctuary for 4 or 5 months. They've been able to just get out there and suspend out off the bank. And when they wanted to feed, they would slide up a little more shallow or maybe towards the bank and become more accessible to, a rig or jerkbait or whatever in the past. But now they've got a jig head minnow, a Demiki rig, a rig thrown at them all winter long, especially on these highland reservoirs that are kind of wide open.
Right.
And they're not getting to rest. They're constantly getting harassed.
Exactly.
I wonder how we haven't been through enough cycles of this yet as far as the winter into the spring, but I wonder how much smarter those fish are when they do come shallow. Are we still going to see, this is a theoretical question. I don't know the answer to this, but are we going to see that where everybody's a pro going down the bank type of fishing in April and May because the fish are stupid? Or those fish that have been harassed, when they pull up, are they going to be a little more harder to catch, a little more weary because of the constant pressure that they've had all winter? That's one of the questions that I'm curious to see how that plays out.
I think to your point, Mother Nature always corrects herself. Whether it's, I look back, the A rig was going to ruin fishing, right? Like you have this 5 rig spinners everywhere, hooks everywhere, and it catches everything in the lake. All you got to do is throw it out there and reel it back. These fish are just going to get smarter every single day. Like Mark said, every time they get their butt shined on, they're going to run away. They understand. Fortunately, bass live long enough to, as we always say, they don't have any reasoning, but
we catch them release. We let them go. We educate them.
Educate that fish. Unfortunately, crappie don't have that prowess. They hit the grease too fast.
Very much so.
But I like eating crappie, and I don't like working for them. So I like to catch my crappie and go to the house. But that's a whole nother topic. But I think Mother Nature, in the grand scheme of this, whether it's a year, whether it's 10 years, will right herself. She will work this all out.
Maybe. I mean, and I'm very hopeful for that thought. But until then, I'm going to go jump in my truck and I'm coming to your house and I'm going to drive my truck right between you guys on the screen and see what happens. You see that truck coming, both of you guys are going to scatter.
Absolutely.
Or if somebody comes driving through on a tractor through your living room, it's going to make you react. And that's what we're doing. At the Santee Cooper tournament that I was runner-up in last year, I actually turned my active target off. It was spooking the fish I was fishing for. I was the only one in the tournament that was fishing for post-spawn fish. The trees that I were fishing in was about 5 feet of water on the river channel. What was really cool, you'd see the tree on your depth finder, and there were 3 species of fish around those trees. The big catfish, the big blue cats, were spawning out there around those trees because those trees were sitting in gravel. And they would take a lap around the tree. You can see them swimming around the tree. At the base of the tree, you'd see 2 little blips, and that was bass. And up high in the water column next to the tree were stripers. Well, I'd take the radar and shoot it at that tree, and all of a sudden that catfish was swimming a bigger lap around the tree.
A
couple seconds later, the stripers kicked into gear and they were gone. They swam off the screen. And then all of a sudden at the base of the tree, my bass would just ease on off. They'd swim on off. They'd fall off the brake line and they'd be gone. So I turned it off and ended up finishing second place. So by definition, there's been one other tournament. I won't leave this out. There's been one other tournament, national event, let's say, that has not been won with forward facing in the last 2 years, or was won without forward facing. And that was Lake Murray, and Drew Benton won that tournament with bedfish and a square bill. I made the comment to him that I was the only guy, I came closest to winning a tournament without using forward facing, and he corrected me. And I said, well, that's fantastic to know, Drew. But he won that tournament sight fishing and catching fish that were moving up with a square bill. but I came in second without it. But I got beat by 13 pounds with a guy that was using forward facing on trees that were bed fish on trees. And he would leave it over there and he could see every movement they were making. Is that fair? I don't know. He got the check. I didn't. But I just feel that in the spirit of fishing, we got to give them a chance. We've got to give the fish a chance. But you're going to see, I think you're going to see some states in the very near future put some litigation in there and put some restrictions on it. I'm understanding that there may be a bill headed to the House in the Wisconsin State House over this. They're very cautious with their fishing resources in Wisconsin. And I think you'll see some more liberal states in the Northeast do the very same thing. I mean, you can't even fish with a lead fishing weight in some of those states up there. You have to have a tungsten weight. So I think you're going to see some of that come. I think we're too early on the data of how many fish are going to get removed from the system, particularly the crappie, because you can wipe crappie out. It doesn't seem to affect them at all. They're dumb as rock.
Mm-hmm.
Flash a brush pile over there and you see 20 over there. If you don't catch 19 out of the 20, you're not doing your job, and they'll stay there whenever. The one thing I will say about fish behavior and learning about fish behavior, it's amazing to me, even with forward facing, when I find that brush pile out in front of me and I'm watching that brush pile, how many fish I see leave the brush pile. It's 1,000 wonders we ever caught a dang fish beforehand and know that brush pile was there and try to sneak up on that brush pile and those fish leave and we didn't know they were leaving. A high percentage of them leave when they feel the radar on their backside. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's a very emotional thing. I've seen some big fights on it. I would say it's definitely not 50-50 on the Bassmaster Elite Series trail, guys that like it, guys that don't. I think it's a higher range. I'd say it's a minimum of 60-40, maybe as high as 70-30 on guys that really don't want it. At least that's what they're telling me on the backside of things, on the political side of things.
That's a big number. I mean, that's a big number. I understand that Bassmasters or Bass has a committee that is interpreting the data from the tournaments, and the way I understand was that there were questions at the last couple tournaments. The anglers have been asked about the forward facing sonar, like how many fish, how much did you use it, how big of a role was it in your tournament catch and stuff.
I haven't been asked any of those questions.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
I
guess that was just a rumor then.
Questions.
Okay.
There was a survey taken of our equipment early in the season. Is the Elite Series was set up to be the strongest tournament situation there is. It was supposed to be fair as far as equipment, which meant I ended up with my own Menendez rule. When I won Dardanelle with the John boat, that ended the ability to switch boats in and out for tournaments. So I killed that one. I take responsibility for that.
That's
but it's supposed to be a fair.
Got to take second when you're doing that. And
well, I should have, I guess.
Should have thrown one back.
Yeah, I should have. But anyway, hold on, guys. My dog just opened the door, and I'm going to have to shut. Melissa's going to get it. Anyway,
I want to see your dog open the door. That's a pretty talented dog.
He just pushed on the door and he opens it. He's a big old boy. But we have to stay in the same boat for the whole year. I can't switch out if I poke a hole in my 21-foot Skeeter, I have to replace that boat with a like in-kind boat.
So you can't run the guys like, I know John Cox has multiple boats, right? That he's traveling the nation with.
He did at one point. But when you start the Elite Series with a 20-foot boat or a 21-foot boat, you have to finish it in a like in kind boat.
Okay.
Now, if you poke a hole in it at an event like a Lake Fork, like several guys did, there were several guys that did that. At that point, you're kind of limited on where you can get a boat overnight, and they're a little more lenient about that. But for you to go to the next event, you have to be in the same type boat. So the whole Elite Series was set up on the best areas with the best fishermen with equivalent tackle, equivalent rigging on their boats. So is it fair that some anglers have up to $50,000 worth of electronics on their boats? We've got some guys that have 7 units on their boats. I mean, it's ridiculous. They light up the sky like a satellite when they're out there waiting to take off in the morning. 7 units. Forward facing on both sides of the transom, forward facing completely 360 all the way around the boat. Is that fair? Is that ethical? Is that, can our fishing friends that are the guys that look up to us, can they afford to do that? Is it a good look? I don't think it is. You know, Barry Bonds is one person I'll bring up in Major League Baseball. Mark McGwire too. They should have an asterisk on their records because they were both guilty of performance enhancing drugs. They set records, but are those records really real? So that's kind of the same place we are right now. I see and understand the sponsor organization relationship before everybody starts jumping on there. There's all kinds of money being exchanged. There is. I agree with that. But without sponsors, I don't have a league to fish in. So I have to find a common ground. And my thought in my original thoughts coming into this season was for limitation. 48 inches of graph. That's all you can have. That's 4 12s or 3 16s or less, and only 1 forward-facing transducer on your boat, and that has to be applied on the trolling mode.
Okay, of those 60, sorry to cut you off, but of the 60% of elite anglers that are kind of leaning towards away from forward-facing sonar, what percentage of those folks do you think would find that those stipulations that you just mentioned, the limited graph space and the 1 forward-facing sonar transducer, would be acceptable?
It makes everything uniform. It makes everything uniform. So one guy that's got a better electronics deal than I have doesn't have a quote unquote advantage with 7 units. That makes it uniform. That goes back to the same size boat that you have to use all year, the same rules that we have. You can't get information. You know, once the schedule is announced, you can't get information. It makes the playing field level. So that's the way I looked at it. Some of my friends out there on tour said, okay, here's what we do is if forward facing is here to stay, we have 2 tournaments. The first 2 tournaments of the year, you can use forward facing. The next 2 tournaments of the year, you can't use forward facing. So you alternate back and forth. That's a fairly reasonable thought process. So I don't know what the answer is, guys. I know what I would like to see. I'd like to see everybody have 2330 Lowrance flashers, and that's all you get. A damn paper map and a flasher, and let your skills as an angler take over. You know, I would like to see that, but that's not real life. That's me being a bitter old man, some people may say, but that's not real life. But there has to be a way that the tournament organization, the sponsors, and the anglers can come to a conclusion such that this is a dead level playing field. A dead level playing field. If you get that, you will see a lot less complaining. You will see a lot less of the anglers playing defense at a tournament by only fishing with forward phase because they think that's the only way it can be won. You will see a change in the attitude, but I would love to see a limitation somehow, or for my own personal, just throw that stuff away and let's get back to fishing as what I feel like it was truly meant to be. Maybe that's antiquated, but I try to look at it 360 degrees for what's best for everybody. I would prefer to go back and use my instincts instead of technology, but that's not real world, and I'll be the first to admit that.
I like this is a good conversation. I like the ideal of a couple tournaments without it. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, but let me play devil's advocate here just for a minute.
You police it.
So there are people that are specialists at a certain technique. You
Sure.
think Hackney with a jig, Christie with
Fritz
a
with a crankbait.
Yes, right.
Clun with a spinnerbait.
Right. I mean, you're pretty good with a jerkbait too. So there's several specialists. Now, can you consider someone who and all these fishermen have spent years and years and years honing that technique.
Right.
They are, and I think you know what I'm getting ready to ask you, but they've devoted immense amounts of time to that specific bait. They've got it dialed in. They know the line size, the rod, the trailer, the colors, everything that makes it do everything. So do you consider someone who has dedicated thousands of hours, like well, we don't even need to name names, but just thousands of hours with that forward facing sonar? Is that a technique too?
I see where you're going with that. My rebuttal was going to be, even though Denny's a specialist with a jig, David's a specialist with a crankbait, they dominated in those tournaments when the conditions were right and the seasonal pattern was right. Mm-hmm. They leaned heavy on that through the entire season. And that's why Denny only won one Angler of the Year. Clun only won one Angler of the Year. Fritz won one Angler of the Year. They weren't as well versed in other things, but when it came time for that, they rocked the house. But that was back when points were basically given by the pounds you caught. So you could have 3 bad tournaments, and then spring comes along, and Denny comes out of nowhere because flipping is a springtime technique, and he wiped us out and made tons of classics. We used to fish a lot of summer tournaments. David Fritz was in the top and won a lot of those summer and late fall tournaments when a crankbait was good. Yes, they were specialists. This technology has yet to prove that a specialist can catch them year round. If you're using this technology as being a specialty, it hasn't proven that yet. I think it's well on its way to proving that. You look at Koyo Fujita. Koyo's fished 12 or 15 tournaments. He's been in the top 10, 7 of those 12, and won 2 of the 12.
Yeah.
He's won 17.5% of all the tournaments he's entered. Where on the other hand, I've fished almost 300. I've won 3 times, so I've won 1% of the time. It's amazing. I mean, they're truly gifted at what they do, but you have to go back to what the essence of fishing actually is. Is it a computer game, or is it the ability to use your mind and brain to position the boat or change a position or get that gut feeling and run up the lake and win the event that way? What is fishing to you? And we have not had that question answered just yet.
So I got a question in 35 years of tournament experience. Have the weights went up?
Yes, they have. When I started in 91.
Well, hold on. Let me reiterate that question. Have the weights went up in the last 5 years? Oh,
they've gone up dramatically. They've gone up 4 to 5 pounds to make the cut since forward facing. In 91, my first year on the Bassmaster Tour, if you caught 8 pounds a day, 5 pound and a half fish a day, you make the classic going away, and you make the classic 3 out of 4 years in a row, and you win Angler of the Year 1 out of those 4 years. 8 pounds a day. Then about 1999 to 2000, that cut slid up to 10 pounds a day.
Okay.
And then it has incrementally gone up.
Without forward facing, it has went up, right? Like,
yeah, forward facing has exponentially pushed it up. And here's the whole thing about forward facing that upsets me more than anything else. You watch these guys, they got their head down, they're going back and forth on their trolling motor, scanning out in front, and they never make a cast until they see a fish. They never make a cast. They never throw one out behind them. They never throw one over to the bank. Until they see one, they make a cast. So they're throwing at some species of fish, could be a bass, could be a crappie, could be whatever, 100% of their casts. Every cast they make, they're throwing at a fish. Doesn't mean that fish is going to eat it, but they're in the proximity very close to what most likely is a bass. As a fisherman, we don't do that because we could be in an area of the lake that looks right and it's dead water. There's no bait fish, there's no bass, there's no nothing. At that point, it's up to me to recognize, hey, crank that Yamaha and haul ass. Let's go. Let's go somewhere else where the wind's blowing on it, or there's more vegetation, which means there's more fish in the system in that part of the lake, more recruitment for more fish, whatever it is. That's what upsets me more than anything. They're making 100% of the time, they're making a cast to a fish. Is there any brain power in that? Well, yes, there is. Like I said, at Lake Fork, in that tournament, the first day I had almost 28 pounds. That's a pretty solid day of fishing in my book.
Yeah.
And I caught them fishing. I was 22nd place. 22nd place. And behind by 12 pounds. So I stuck to my guns. I stuck to what was going on. And I finished the tournament in 48th place. I made a check. At this point, I feel like if I'm not using forward facing, I'm fishing for about 40th place. Every domino has to be right in line for me to finish 40th place down. That's what I feel like. So yeah, am I jaded by that? Yeah, I am. I won't lie to you. I am. But I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. I'm going to have to get on the bandwagon and go and start utilizing this technology to the best of my ability and how it suits me. You know, the one misnomer I will say about it is people think you just drop a trolling motor over the front, you go out there and start looking, and you're going to catch fish. Again, you could go to the wrong part of the lake. You could have put in at the wrong part of the lake at the wrong time of the year. And there not be a quantity of fish there for you to catch. So what I think you're going to end up seeing is more of a blend of old school and new school, old school being the seasonal pattern, and new school, once you dial that seasonal pattern in, taking the new school and dialing it in further, even to be more effective. I think that's what most of these tournament guys are doing right now.
This is the question I asked Perkins last week. What happens when guys like Mark and Swindle and I can go and name all the veterans. What happens when you guys learn it to that
Well, I
ability?
hope we start kicking that young ass is what I hope.
But you know what I mean? You know where I'm getting at on that. Like, you take all of the 35 years of knowledge plus this, well, you should be invincible. You guys should be invincible, right? But
Well,
back to your
that
point,
kind of goes back to that 85 years that I made. Or I have to be open-minded enough to utilize that.
Well,
Right,
that's
right.
what I was going to go back. The analogy that I was going to make with you on Rick Clunn and the 85 years. You guys are reading from a 7-part novel. They're
Correct.
reading from a picture book. No
They're
pun
reading from
intended, but
most of them.
they don't have the knowledge base. You've already forgotten more than they'll ever know. I think somebody said it earlier. I wish I knew 10% of what you forgot. Like,
that was Beffa.
Beffa, yeah, Jay Beffa
Yeah.
said that. Like, that's 100% the truth. I wish I knew as much as you've forgotten, and I wish I knew 0.5% of what Clunn has forgotten.
Oh my gosh!
Right.
Yes, just I mean, it's amazing what I've seen in those 35 years. It's amazing the deductions that I've made that have made me a better angler over that time, and that's the part that warms my heart when I go to talk to a group of young kids. I've got another high school deal I've got on the books here for when I come back from the Florida swing. The last time I went to a high school deal, you know, I kind of lost those kids. And then one kid goes, well, we really want to know about forward facing. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you better learn these basics before you put all your eggs into forward facing, just like the kid whose transducer broke and he lost a college tournament the other day. You've got to have a foundation under you to understand, other than just driving around and seeing a bunch of dots on the screen and go, oh, look, I'll catch some bass now, or those are white bass or whatever it is. or crappie or whatever it is. You've got to have that basis. Now, like I said, the kids are making 100% of their casts at fish. It has sped this game up so much faster than it ever did. 2D sonar didn't do that. Side scan didn't do that. Did it help some anglers that spent the time to learn the technology? It did at times, but side scan really doesn't help you much under 10 feet of water. You can't see far enough out to the side to find a piece of cover, to find a shell bed, find bluegill beds. You can't see far enough. So it didn't speed it up to this. We're in Star Wars here, guys. I mean, when they leave the mothership and they put the afterburners on, that's what's happening during a tournament day. The people that are using it to put the afterburners on, and they're putting their bait in front of more fish than what a conventional fisherman can do.
Real quick announcement. We are going to be giving away a $25 Baitworks gift card here in a little while. Also, it's springtime, it's a good time to go through the boat and see what is missing. And because you don't want to be out there looking for your favorite, whatever it is, your favorite Strike King 1.5, and it's not in the box. So it's a good time to stock up on stuff. If you do go to Baitworks, you can use the code THM10 and it will get you 10% off of your order. Back to Rick Clum though. I'm going
to stop you right there.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'm going to get you to another point that I'm extremely worried about that I'm not hearing any of my guys talking much about. Let's talk about the tackle industry. Let's talk about what's being sold right now.
Good.
Jig head minnow and a bag of plastic baits, maybe a jerk bait, maybe a spoon, maybe a little of this, a little of that. There's not many people buying flipping jigs. There's not many people buying spinner baits. There's not many people buying vibrating jigs. There's not many people buying 6XDs. If this trend continues, a lot of these baits that we have put so much development on, I have a new crankbait coming out with Strike King here in the very near future. I've busted my butt to build the best crankbait that will dive in 5 to 7 feet of water that you can imagine. I'm so proud of it. Partnered with Mike Russell at Strike King, and we knocked it out of the park. There's not a need for that now. So my guys, the guys that I'm around all the time, it takes a lot of money to do what I do. So the endorsements from bait companies, they could probably get very shallow and very slender with what is being sold right now. So forward facing is dictating what is being bought at the tackle stores. Now, I'm always going to wind a plug. There ain't nothing better in the world. You feel that plug coming across the bottom and fish cut your line and you got him. Dude, that's what I live for. That's or spinnerbait or whatever. I'm going to fish that way because that's what makes my heart sing. But are we looking at a lean year in tackle sales? I'm very concerned about that because the only thing that is being shown on the Bassmasters is a jig head minnow and a jerkbait. Will there be improvements in those categories? Yeah. But hell, when you're throwing it out there where you won't ever get it hung, where you're not going to lose it, how many jig head minnows you going to lose in a day's time? Not many. So tackle sales are looking dismal at this point, in my opinion. It could go that way.
I wish he would sell it to my bank account because my bank account doesn't look free.
Well, I mean, I've been buying them, and they had a beautiful booth over there at the Classic, and I talked to Stick, known Stick forever over there at the Baitworks, and we talked about it. He says, yeah, we're starting to finally sell some other baits, some spinner baits, some crank baits, gravel dogs, and things like that. We're selling some of that now, and it's on the uptick now. But through the winter, we didn't sell squat.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Tyler Williams because he's a forward-facing sonar guy, but he throws a jig. Yeah, he does throw a jig, so there's a little bit of standardness in his attack.
I think it's great that's what his specialty is. But take that ability to look in front of the boat away from him, he's still going to catch some fish because the kid's got it figured out where to put that jig without knowing exactly using the radar beam in front of him. The kid understands a seasonal pattern.
Right. So back to Rick Clum that I started to talk about. I heard him. He was on Mercer. He's been guest appearing on Mercer every month or so, and it's really nice. It's delightful to hear him. Yeah, right? I love listening to him, man.
It's deep. It's deep, and that's what I love about Rick is his mind. He does not let his forethoughts dictate without doing all the research and thinking of it from a 360-degree angle.
Yeah, and I liked his perspective on the forward-facing sonar, but I also liked how he talked about this is kind of backing off of what you talked about when you were talking about the weights have increased since forward-facing sonar, or just in general through the years of Bassmaster. He was talking about how his he had a formula where I think it was 12 pounds of fish would go so far in just about every tournament and would qualify you for the Classic, and it's changed, and he's had to readjust his mindset on chasing bigger and bigger fish. But he also said that back in those days, there were, let's say there were 100 anglers in the tournament. You were really competing against 20 of them or 30. I can't remember what the number was.
Probably less than that.
Okay, right. But as we've gone into the future further and further with the development of high school fishing and college fishing, these anglers have gotten better, and social media, YouTube, these anglers have gotten better and better and better. So now instead of you only having to beat 20 anglers, you got to beat the whole field. So
well, you've got to beat a higher percentage of them, that's for sure. You know, and one of the things is that we've been great educators. I basically view myself as an educator. I love to teach. I love it when the light bulb comes on and somebody gets the thought process. But you got to think, when I started fishing bass in 1991, I had to wait 6 months. Excuse me, I had to wait about 3 months to get the current issue of Bassmaster. So the transfer of knowledge that was in those articles was out there about 3 months. And then we'd have a season of, this is Bob Cobb with the Bassmasters. You had the Bassmaster television show. I saw Bob at the Classic. It was great to see Bob. But, you know, on TNN in 1985, you started with that series, and that was even quicker. But there was a production delay of that of about 5 to 6 weeks per each tournament. So now you take the internet, which you can assimilate information so fast, and now you take the tournaments that we have, and let's say the last time I was, you know, at Santee Cooper, which was the last time I was on live, I was in the top 10. I developed a new technique with a plastic worm. I did something wacky with it or crazy with it. It was a new technique. Well, now a kid can watch that, get the concept in his head, and leave and go to the lake that day and master what I just developed in my mind for the first time in my life. He can master that technique within the hour.
Yeah.
That's how much faster information assimilation has happened. And that's the same thing with forward facing. It is a faster game, and it's a different assimilation of information than what we once had. When I finally got GPS, just GPS, the ability to punch a waypoint and come back to that spot, it robbed from me. It robbed one of the most critical things that I ever learned about fishing. It completely 100% robbed triangulation from me. Because in the 80s, I could run down Kentucky Lake, run down the middle of the lake, run to a ledge, drop my trolling motor, look around, and line up my points, my 3 points that I had lined up, make the cast, and hit that one stump that was on that ledge. I could hit it on the first or second cast every time. And I had 500 places like that. Well, I get GPS, and I go out there, and I get to that stump, and I go, doop, doop. I put me a dot there. Well, hell, it takes me 15 casts even to get close to it until I remember, oh, yeah, you got to line up that dock and that tree. You got to line up that light pole and that buoy. You got to line up that point and close it off with the other point. Then I make the cast right there and I can hit it. But it robbed from me. So it took skills away from me that were important by the new technology of GPS, the ability to come back to a place by having a point on it. And that's what forward facing is doing. It is robbing from the angler the skills that he has mastered in his brain. It has completely eliminated that. And I'm a little bit chapped about that, guys. I'll be honest about it. It bothers me that the next generation of anglers is not going to have a thought process like I did. They'll have a different thought process on how they're going to use you know, laser beams to find their fish. But is that fishing? It's catching. Does that equate to fishing? But it does not go through the same mental process that has allowed me to be on the Elite Series for 35 years. I had a very close friend come to me and said, you know, I'm really impressed with you. And I go, what? You've known me forever. How can you be impressed with me? As much stupid stuff as I do, you know, back in the water, not put my plug in the boat, leave the tie downs on the back of the boat, all the stupid stuff that most everybody does. I do it too, I promise.
Yeah.
But she said to me, she says, you've been on the Elite Series for 34 years and you don't have an exemption. I don't have an Angler of the Year exemption. I don't have a Classic exemption. She says, you've had to qualify 34 years in a row. And that's impressive.
It is.
Never thought of it in those terms. And I was humbled. I mean, this is a long-time friend of mine that's married to a professional fisherman. She said this to me. And she says, we're most impressed with that. And I never thought about it. You know, I'm so close to the fire of what I do. Got to make sure I get in that, get those points, get those checks, keep things moving, keep the sponsors happy so that I can play the game. But that kind of set me back on my back heels. But that's because I've always understood seasonal pattern.
Yeah, I agree. And that's so that adds to the aspect of these younger anglers, high school fishing and college fishing, and having a good coach that hopefully can say, hey, it's not just about this forward facing sonar. You got to learn the basics. You got to learn the fundamentals. Let's go out and let's figure out where these fish are in the winter, where they're at in the spring, why they're moving from point A to point B, and where's point C, where are they going to?
Right.
You can have a mentor that teaches these kids fish location, seasonal patterns, and behavior and stuff like that. And I think if you do add that on to the technology, which I think some of these kids, I say kids, but some of these rookies, I know Drew Gill. I know Trey a little bit, Trey McKinney. He lives just about an hour away. And Jake Lawrence is another guy that's hot down there in your neck of the woods.
Right.
Those guys know the fundamentals. They know how to catch
well, do they?
with or without of it. I'm pretty sure they do. I know Jake does for sure. I've heard he's been very successful for quite a while, but
he has been
right. Pre forward facing sonar. So I think
there are the oldest one of the three you mentioned.
That's
so
true.
He had to have some sort of a basis for honing his skills before we had the ability to look forward.
Right. But so back to Trey. Trey has been mentored by Cheatham, who is well known in this area as being, one of the better fishermen, a veteran angler for this area. He's been doing it for quite a while, and he's definitely not lacking in the knowledge. And he's, taken Trey under his wing and taught him some of this stuff. So that's why some of this is I'm assuming that Trey he's had at least access to the fundamentals and been on the water with someone that was able to teach him those fundamentals. And I'm sure he's picked up a lot of that stuff. So I think he can still catch them without it. But I'm not saying that all of these new pros or up and coming, the guys that are going to qualify next year or 2026, 2027 have that same background, because as let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. The newer generation is going to lean on this technology more and more without learning the fundamentals. That's just going to be the natural progression of things. Just like when you teach a high school class, everybody wants to know about forward facing sonar. They don't want to learn about any of these other stuff.
Well, and back to like the triangulation point, like I never had to learn triangulation. Like
I did.
I didn't have to learn that. I figured out that point one is, my goodness, is a lifesaver for me, because I could point that boat and it gives me a line out there.
Yeah, but you didn't have point one. There was times when you had graphs.
No, but I didn't fish offshore a lot either, though.
Well, that's true. I had to do that quite a bit. I remember that. I didn't have the money to buy pretty good electronics, so
I just fished the bank. I'll be honest.
Right. I did a lot too. But even getting out on the point without a graph, getting out on a point and I made a cast and I caught a fish, I was kind of looking for something to kind of figure out how. I kind of look at the bank. Okay, I need to be about 50 yards off the bank. I've got that reference. Then I'm looking for either another secondary point or something up in the woods. A lot of these lakes that we fish around here, they don't have. There's no houses. You know, it's all natural reference points. There's no red barn,
skylines and closing points off.
A sycamore tree or something that's different color.
And that damn tree always got cut down by a beaver every single time.
So anyway, I'm familiar with that triangulation to make that same cast. So I can only imagine someone like you that had a bunch of those spots that they were kind of to yourself when the mapping came out, how that sucked.
Well, it did, but here's something funny that happened to me a couple of years ago. We were at the Harris Chain and the St. Johns River, and after COVID, you know, supply chains were next to nothing, and Lawrence could not get me my equipment on time. My boat came in late. I'm hustling to get equipment. I couldn't get it, so I actually went through my garage and found a bunch of antiques. I had a 2330 flasher on there. I had an X15 for mapping. That's about a 2005 model on there, which is it's the same one that I have on the G3 that I won Dardanelle, 15 years ago. Then I had a HDS 10 Gen 2 on the dash. So I found a hole in the grass at the Harris Chain. And the only reason I found it is I'm headed to a line of pads. I'm throwing a worm out in front of me. It goes to the bottom and I get a bite. In practice, I set the hook and it's a 3-pounder, which it's a good fish anywhere in the world. And I fished around long enough that I figured out there was a hole in the grass about twice the length of my boat and trailer and about twice the width of my boat and trailer in the shape of a football. And it was perpendicular to a little line that you would go in towards those pads. Well, the first morning of the tournament, I go running over there and there's local boats on it. I can't get on it. I had a good day that day. I had about 15 pounds that day and caught a 6-pounder and a 5-pounder on a bed. And so I had a good day. The second day I run over there, there's a boat on it that morning, and I'm not going to cut a local angler off. He's got the opportunity. It's a public body of water. I'm going to let him fish it. I come back at 1 o'clock and there's nobody on it. Now I got 5 that are cute in the live well. They're about that tall. They might have weighed 6 pounds. I think I had one there was about 1.5 pounds. And I'm out there looking for that hole. And when I finally get there, I make that cast with that cutter worm and one eats it. 3.5 pounder. Out goes a pounder. Well, the wind's pushing me. And I didn't have spot lock for a trolling motor. So the wind pushes me and I'm trying to find it by using my X15, which is on the old WAS network, the WAS satellites, WAAS. Well, those things, your line, you can't just go back over there like a 0.1 and throw right over there and know exactly where you were. So I finally find the hole again. 15 minutes later, I make a cast, catch another 3-pounder. By the time I cull and take the fish off, I'm 70 yards from it the way the wind was blowing. And I troll my butt back up there and I finally find it again. I'm like, you are such a moron. There's a boat dock in a corner of a house. There's a point of reeds and another point behind it. Like, get those off of it. And then I sat there for the next 30 minutes and I stayed right where I needed to be. And I was getting a bite about every 6 minutes. I left there with 19 pounds, made me $10,000 because of triangulation. Yeah. It was like me turning the lights off in this room and turning them back on, and you could hear the angels singing, there you go. But technology robbed some of the things that are very basic fundamentals to anglers. But the other side of that is technology is going to produce new techniques and new skills. So we've yet to see what those new skills are going to be. So we'll see where that goes.
Speaking of a Lowrance Gen 2 HDS 10 non-touch unit, I saw one of those at the Bassmaster Classic. So,
oh yeah, Robertson's got them on his boat.
Yeah, I saw that. I picture him.
I can tell you exactly why. That unit draws with side scan better than any unit on the market before or after. That unit is a badass unit on side scan. It draws the prettiest picture I've ever seen.
It's got the
still
quick
have the
keys
one iron.
on the bottom too. doesn't it? The quick.
So I have the 8s, and the 8s are. I had a little bit of buyer's remorse when I bought my lives,
Mm-hmm.
and my 8s still draw a really, really, really good picture.
Well, be like everybody else and put another dang unit on your boat, and you'll be just fine.
Hold on. I'm fishing out of a 16-foot John boat.
You got limited real estate
with 3 graphs on it. I mean, I'd get chastised if I had, a couple.
You got
more.
2 on the front and 3 on the side, or no? You're down to.
I'm 2 and 1. I got 3
2 and 1.
graphs.
That's
so
right.
I
You
got
down.
12.
Just tell them you want to be like every professional fisherman in the whole damn universe.
The problem is
that's what
mounting
you're
them
trying
anywhere.
to do. You're trying to be your best self. There you go.
Well, I had an oh shit moment 2-3 weeks ago, and I set the.
I've never had one of those.
I was flipping down the bank because I love throwing a jig on 20-pound string and watching that line jump. And I set the hook and I missed one. And I looked back and that jig missed the top of that HDS live by about that much, and she puckered up real tight. And
oh yeah, I'm sure.
I started putting covers back on my graphs again.
The sun cover, yeah. It's not just for the sun.
I understand.
So
yeah,
but
that can happen so quick.
Let's get off this FFS talk.
Thank God.
Let's talk about
that. Was a great conversation, though. I appreciate you going down that rabbit hole with us, Mark.
Kentucky
I try to look at it, as 360 as I can. If I look at it in a jaded view, which most people try to do, that's not being real. I have to look at it in terms of what's best for the organization, what's best for the sponsors, and what's best for the anglers. And then that will be the best outcome for everybody. Everybody, if there's a scenario where everybody can win, which may be the 48 inches of graph and 1 transducer, that's fine. The other thing that I propose is you're welcome to use it in the opens. Use it in the opens. I don't care. I don't fish the opens. You can use it in the opens. The companies still get to sell a lot of units. The sponsorship is still available. And then when you get to the Elite Series is supposed to be the best of the best. Take it away from the elite guys and move on. That's a scenario that I think everybody can live with. And if you're going to depend on that to get out of the opens into the Elite Series, and you get to the Elite Series and you don't have it, I'd love for you to be that guy, because I'm going to take your money then. I think that's my favorite scenario that I've come up with to this day. Leave it in the opens, leave it in the nation, leave it in the up and coming to the high school and the college. That's fine. But when you get to the Elite Series, put your big boy pants on. You better learn how to fish. That way, everybody wins. The organization wins, the sponsor wins, and the anglers win.
Hey, dude, one more question. This is kind of like tied into this a little bit, but I've heard this come up a couple of times over the last couple of years. What's your thoughts on a possible, the word's not legends, but senior league, like over 50, that kind of thing.
That would be cool.
Is that even a possibility for something like that to happen?
There's been talk about it. I've heard scuttlebutt about it. I think that would be really great to have that, because I qualify.
Naturally,
it would be fun to hang out with these guys that love to fish just as much as I do. I can draw a direct correlation to that. One of the only pro golfers from our area, Russ Cochran, was my next door neighbor for years and years and years. Russ played on the PGA Tour. He won 1 PGA tournament. He went to the Seniors Tour and won $5 million the first year. Dang. He won the Senior British Open. He won all kinds of tournaments the first year. It was very viable for him, and it financially, it was a great deal for him. I would love to see it. I think there would be a lot of interest in that. You have a lot of anglers. The anglers that I looked up to, like Rick Clunn. Rick is 77, 78 years old. Roland's 82. Bill Dance is in that 80-year-old range. Hank Parker, he's in that 75-year-old range right there. Would those guys like to come and fish a few tournaments? I'm sure they would. The time that I fished with Roland, I never have been in a boat with anybody that wanted to catch the next fish as bad as what Roland Martin wants to catch the next fish. We had a hell of a good time that day. I think it'd be great. I think it would it would legitimize our sport even more for the non-fishing public to understand that we have multiple generations of fishermen that are responsible for what's going on right now. I think it would be a great idea, and it'd be a hell of a lot of fun to fish with.
I remember years ago they used to have a Legends tournament. I watched it on Table Rock Lake down at like Bass Pro Shops. It was, I can't remember who all was in that, but that was it was just kind of a one-off deal. You know, it was like a spring classic Legends tournament or something. But I remember
what was that comment that just flew up there, guys? Something about the Elite Series.
That was from Rich Hellabass. He said if the elites are still fishing for each other's entry fees, then not a lot of budget to be operating a senior/Legends tour.
Potentially, it could be. But I think you would have a very rich interest in that from someone like Johnny Morris, who was one of the pivotal anglers in the early days, in those early tournaments. You know, Johnny's a 5-time Bassmaster Classic qualifier, so he knows what it is to be in those trenches. There could be some budget monies moved around there in that.
I don't think it's with Bassmasters. I think it's outside of the scope of Bassmasters.
Either way, I don't care. I think it would be fun. I think it would be good for the sport. I do.
Would it draw interest?
I think it would definitely draw interest.
I think it would. I definitely think it would.
I mean, Clun won in 19 at the ripe old age of 72 years old and handed us our ass. You know, it was really cool in that tournament. I finished third in that tournament, and Rick is right across the river from me, and we're within sight of one another. And you know that we're going toe to toe. I can see him catch those fish. I can see him catch one. I can see that it's a big one. I can't tell that it's a 9-pounder, but he knew that I was catching them on my side of the river too. So here we were slugging it out. One of my most favorite tournament memories of all memories. And the best part about it was Rick was 10th going into that tournament. So when I got to weigh in, he was on the hot seat, and I walk over there to shake his hand, and he looks at me and he says, "I'm not going to shake your hand, but I'll hug you." He gave me a big old hug and said, "It was amazing. You fished an amazing event."
That's good.
That's the human part of Rick that I love so much. But I think there would be some interest. There would be interest there because Rick, you think about it, guys, most of Rick's strategies and most of his theories is how you and I both fish. Breaking that lake down, breaking that creek down, breaking the lake into that seasonal pattern. You know, part 1, part 2, part 3. Up in the creek, it's part A, part A, B, part C. We all do that. That's because of that man and what he taught us how to find those fish. So I think there would definitely be interest in that. And then if you could find a production company that would be willing to go back down memory lane to really look at the market, thought process or theory or how it was done and really highlight that, you could tell a huge story about bass fishing. Did you guys see the series that Bass put out earlier this year called Bass the Cast, where the history of Bassmasters was on there?
I haven't got to watch them all yet, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I couldn't breathe through those because those were my heroes. A lot of what they were talking about, I lived through. So I thought it was an amazing storytelling of how the Bassmaster Tournament Trail came to be and how it's still at the top of the heap. It was an amazing, amazing series. I recommend everybody to go back and look at some of that just to learn more about our sport.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about the 4 or 5 trips that I've made to Springfield and been to the Hall of Fame and the wonders of wildlife there at the Bass Pro Shops. Have you been to it?
Yeah.
It is
really cool.
I've been, I think, 4 or 5 times, and every single time, like I walk into that Hall of Fame, it's like the best. And I haven't got to do it yet. No offense to my wife, but the best would be to be out there just by yourself and take the time and really dive into.
Well, sure. I get it.
Into our part of it, right? The bass fishing part of it.
Just you and a couple bass heads.
Yeah.
And a couple of buddies.
And I know when my dad and I got to walk through it, we got a phone call about an hour into it. It was like, "Hey, you need to come up here." And we were about a quarter of the way in, just sitting there reminiscing all the winners and all the classic guys.
Sure.
I mean, just the it just takes you down memory lane. You know, that's what my heroes, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I get to talk. You talked about talking to your hero. I'm getting to talk to one of my heroes. Like, you're the local guy for us.
Well,
I
I
mean,
appreciate that. You know, what's interesting about that, you saying the local guy, you go in there, and I don't know if you saw the picture of Jimmy Houston with a guy holding the bag for him as he's dropping fish into his bag to go to weigh in. Well, that guy right there is a local guy. That is a guy from Murray, Kentucky. His name is Hugh Massey. He won the last BCA national championship in 1977. He's a 5-time Bassmaster qualifier, and I still get to talk to him on occasion because he runs the gun department at Benson Sporting Good in Murray, Kentucky. That guy was a hero to me. So you go there and you see that picture, and I look, well, that's Hugh Gray Massey right there in that picture. And my son was like, "Do you know him?" I said, "Well, that's Jimmy right there. I kick Jimmy in the knee every time I see him." But that guy right there was really important in my development as a fisherman when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. Really neat to see those comparisons there to where you guys, I've been the local guy here and Hugh was the local guy to me. You
yeah.
know, just an amazing deal that Johnny Moore's put together.
Well, the one that, and I've told this story, I think every time you've been on, but the one thing that about you took the time out of your day one day at Dunn's just to talk to me and my brother, like for an hour. Like, we're just two kids walking through the store, and you took the time out of your day just to talk to us, and that's what made me a fan forever. And I think a lot of times in the sport we forget that there's a lot of eyes on us, and there's even more eyes on us now, right?
Oh, there's eyes everywhere. I mean, you can't go anywhere without a cell phone cam or whatever. Long time ago, a good friend of mine that I was rooming with on tour, he says, "Look, dude, you're going to be just fine in this business." I was maybe 4, 5, 6 years into the business, and he goes, "Just remember these words." And I was like, I was waiting for something groundbreaking, and he said, "Just be nice. Just be nice." And I met all these people this weekend at the Bassmaster Classic. They love fishing just as much as I do. I've just had the opportunity to get to go fishing a little more than the average person has. It doesn't make me any better, doesn't make me any more special. I just had more water time than the other guy. But the folks that I come up and meet, they love fishing just as much as I do. And I feel a real innate responsibility that because I have that opportunity to fish more, give back. Tell them the real deal. In Bassmaster University years ago, when Gary White was running it, he gave a chance to a kid that you only used to get 2 chances. You know, you get 2 shows one weekend. And if you didn't do well, you didn't get asked back. Well, I got asked back, and I kept doing it. I'd get 2, then I get 4, and then I got 6. And then he gave me an awful lot of days to work because he was getting the feedback that the information that I was spreading to the students was the real deal. It was the real, sneaky stuff. It was the real tricks to the trade. It was why you put that trailer hook on there, why I put a big ribbon tail trailer on that spinnerbait, why you rig that worm with a straight shank worm hook, those type things. And by giving that information to others, it secured me a lot more work to make more money to be able to fish. But it did win me legions of friends along the way. So I've always tried to be like that.
It's good stuff. Okay. I want to ask you a question about spinnerbaits.
All right.
On the thumbnail for this live stream, there's a picture of you holding a rather plump largemouth with a like a spinnerbait, ugly spinnerbait, in my opinion, had like a green pumpkin head on it. It had like a chartreuse trailer, if I remember.
Oh, okay.
Kind of an oddball looking spinnerbait, in my opinion. So talk a little bit about like blade combinations, skirt, trailers, when to use certain things. There's specialty blades, there's specialty skirt colors, trailers and stuff. Just that kind of stuff, because it's that time of year, fall.
Oh, it is spinnerbait time.
Right.
For whatever reason, I realized very early on as a young person that the profile of a spinnerbait catches a larger than average bass. And I don't know whether it was one of my mentors that taught me that, or just experience taught me that. And there was a local spinnerbait company here in the tri-state area, Western Kentucky, Southern Illinois, Southeast Missouri. It's called Bassmaster Lure Company. And that bait came from Lake Seminole. A fellow by the name of A.J. Edwards developed that bait, brought it up here, and sold the company to a local guy named Mickey Joe DeMoss. Mickey Joe was from Madisonville, Kentucky, and was an unbelievable spinnerbait fisherman. That's all he threw was spinnerbait. He built a spinnerbait that was a 1/2 ounce bait that had a number 4 and a number 5 Colorado, and got a flat living rubber skirt that he ordered a specific amount of and a specific color of, but the color came in wrong. And it was a lime, ugly, not Kelly green, not chartreuse, but this very putrid green color. Not chartreuse, green. And he paired that with a big white worm, white ribbon tail worm on it. And then he went to catching the crap out of them for years on that spinnerbait. Mickey Joe just passed away not long ago. And that number 4, number 5 Colorado combination was one that I got because I could get the bait, and I started playing with it. And I found that a Colorado blade moves slower, which in cold water, bass are cold-blooded creatures. They move at the same rate of the water temperature. So if you've got cold water, there's Mike Russell. Mike, don't talk about cantaloupe spinnerbait. We're not there yet. Anyway, those Colorado blades create a lot more vibration, and it gave me a lot of control as to when I brought the bait beside a piece of cover, if I could keep it high in the water column, in the middle of the water column, or at the bottom. So Colorado blades are really good cold water baits. Spinnerbaits kind of evolved after that, and the willow leaf became more popular. Colorado willow combination is the number 1 most bought spinnerbait combination. It's one that the Colorado gives a little bit of vibration, but a willow is a long, narrow blade, does not have a lot of vibration, but it has a lot of flash. And when you use a larger willow leaf blade, you can also slow that bait down and control the bait. And then the other combination that I use an awful lot is a double willow. I use that primarily in the fall with clear, translucent color spinnerbait skirts and in clear water. And I'm ripping that back to the boat as fast as I can to get violent strikes, just to trigger that strike and get those fish to chase that down. Smallmouth and spotted bass are just terrible about, they can't stand it. They either love it or hate it. I don't care. I know it makes them eat it. So a spinnerbait is a lot more than just casting and retrieving. It is about how you bring that bait past the cover, how you bring that bait down the break line off the side of a point, how you utilize that in the water column. There's one thing I always say about a spinnerbait, that I do not have a spinnerbait tied on in which there's not a trailer hook on it. It makes it a little more difficult to get it in and around cover, and I get hung up a few more times during the day, but I catch a high quantity of the fish I catch on a spinnerbait on that trailer hook. And the picture you all are talking about on the thumbnail probably is one that I caught while filming. Is it that little 18-inch fish that looks just like a
it was a football,
like a fire plug? Yeah, that fish wasn't 18 inches long, and he damn near weighed 4 pounds.
You had him hooked on the trailer hook too, though.
I got him on the trailer hook.
You did.
Those fish that day, I was filming an episode of Mark Menendez Bass TV. Y'all be able to see that on WPSD starting the first Saturday in April at 5 a.m. Put your DVR on. I know it's early to watch a fishing show, but get your DVRs on. That day, I ended up with about 16 and a half, 17 pounds of fish on the show. And every good one I caught early that day, I caught on the trailer hook, and as water warmed up, they bit the bait a little bit better. You saw a real bright chartreuse trailer on that. That is a bluegill color skirt. I put that chartreuse on there. And sometimes you want a contrast. Some days I want a white on white that's a big profile. Some days I want that contrast. And I find that in this pre-spawn time period, when it's cold like that, that contrast, that dark bait with the chartreuse on it, really makes those fish come on up and nip at it. And that's where the trailer hook comes in. That tournament I mentioned about Clun, the St. Johns River, the third day of the tournament, I had a great day on a spinnerbait. I was using a black spinnerbait. Not many people throw a black spinnerbait. I had a piece of chartreuse on the shank of the hook with a trailer hook, but I did not have a trailer on it. Water was really clear, really black looking in that Florida water. And I wanted that little bit of flash and contrast to get those fish to hit it. And it worked well that day. I caught my biggest bass of my career, which still stands as the biggest bass caught in an Elite Series event. It was the biggest bass of the first 31 years. I caught a 13-pound, 9-ounce bass in megabucks at Richland Chambers. 2 days before, I caught my second biggest bass, which was an 11-pounder. And every big bass I've ever caught basically has come on that spinnerbait. Biggest bass ever caught on Kentucky Lake's a 9 1/4. I caught it on a ledge on a spinnerbait. Whatever reason, and some things are non-scientific to me, like why bass bite a red crankbait in the early spring or in the winter. I don't know why they do it. I just know they do it, so I throw red. I just know that big fish react to that profile of a spinnerbait.
So in that trailer color change where you're putting a chartreuse on there, is that, we go back to gut, is that a gut? Is that a, what I guess what I'm getting at is how long do you wait? You're throwing matching bluegill with a green pumpkin trailer.
When do you make that change?
When do you make that change? That's like the ultimate question, right? But
Well,
any bit of knowledge that we can get
watercolor. That has to do more with watercolor.
Okay.
You know, that watercolor on Lake Brashears where I was fishing was a real pretty green. I could see the blade of that spinnerbait flashing about 18 to 24 inches down. And then I got into an area where it was a little dirtier, and that flash of that chartreuse just made all the difference in the world for those fish. It gives those fish something to hone in on. Like with a crankbait, I want a crankbait that has a dark back, that has a little overspray on the side of the bait, and then a white belly or a chartreuse belly. So when that crankbait turns, it gives a pulse of color. Anytime that crankbait pulses, it pulses and looks real pretty. That's the same thing with a spinnerbait. I want to have that contrast so that pulse of color may be what gets him fired up enough to move. And then when he runs into it and nips the end of that trailer, he finds that trailer hook. And I got him with a number 3 Gamakatsu trailer hook on it, and I reel him to the boat. So the contrast is a big deal for me.
Would that be like throwing a painted blade too?
Oh, I love a painted blade. Painted blade is something that's real important. It doesn't get utilized as much as other colors of blades. I throw copper an awful lot too. Copper is the one I use from the end of winter to about the middle of spring. Very few people throw a copper. At Lake Fork in the tournament here the other day, the first morning of the tournament, it was actually sleeting on us. It was cold as all get out. And I go back to that 35 years of experience in which the master of a spinnerbait told me one day in a conversation, always throw a spinnerbait when it snows. Well, that was Rick Clun. So I'm swimming a jig. I got 35 bites of swim jig bites the day before, and it's spitting rain. I got a swim jig in my hand. I said, boy, you're a dummy. It's snowing. Pick up a spinnerbait. And I had a double Colorado tied on there with a cantaloupe on it. And the first cast I caught a 6.4. The second cast I caught a 4-pounder, and it quit sleeting and snowing. And I put the spinnerbait down as soon as it quit sleeting and snowing and went back to the swim jig. But when it was sleeting and snowing, boom, boom, I caught 2 great big ones. Caught so many big fish in the snow on a spinnerbait from that little tidbit that I picked up from Rick. They still bite a spinnerbait, guys. I know that the cool and trending thing is a bladed jig. You guys just keep throwing that when the water's real, real cold. I'll take my spinnerbait 2 to 1 over that. That bladed jig comes in more into play when water temperatures get a little warmer. But again, with the painted blade, you know, that orange kicker blade, that just throws a flash of color. And that's great this time of year. But in the fall, in the late fall, I love a white spinnerbait blade, and I love a chartreuse spinnerbait blade. But I've won an awful lot of money, guys, a white spinnerbait with double white blades on it. I almost won the All-American doing that back in 1996. I had it won when I checked in the first flight. And Stephen Browning caught a £1.50 to win the tournament between the first flight and the second flight. But that would have been won on a painted blade spinnerbait had I won that tournament.
I had my introduction. Well, not necessarily introduction, but my conversion, and I became a believer in a painted blade spinnerbait in Eddy Creek on Barkley Lake in a BFL, probably 6-7 years ago, something like that.
It's been 10 years ago.
No, it ain't been that long.
We started fishing them in 14.
No, we didn't. 15. It's 50. Yeah, it's 9 years ago. Golly, thanks. Thanks for ruining my evening. Thanks for ruining my evening. Okay. I just got a little more gray in my goatee. But anyway, that was the day where I saw the power of those painted blades. Because I'd thrown them occasionally, but I didn't have confidence in them. But when that water, the water was, man, it was like 6 inches of visibility. Yeah. And it was April. It was a pre-spawn period. And they crushed it.
I still got a pile of those spinnerbaits from that.
I had 17 pounds, and the other guy in the boat had 23 pounds. I was fishing out of the back of this guy's boat, and so the boater had 23. I had 17 with 4 fish. All came on that spinnerbait. After that, I bought
40 pounds.
10 of those. Do what?
9 fish weighed 40 pounds.
Yeah. So needless to say, I bought about 10 or 15 of those as soon as I got home, and I still throw them to this day. It's a very specific time for me. You know, the water has to be pretty dirty. It's got I know when I see it. When I'm fishing, I'm like, that's the kind of water that I need to be throwing that painted blade. And I've had some pretty good days on it, but it's not. You may go a whole year and not even find the right conditions. Yep. Yeah, but when it's there, it can be just absolute lights out.
I carry a whole box of different blades, different components, different skirts. I carry a box that weighs about 40 pounds of beads and clevises and blades. And so I build a lot of spinnerbaits on the fly. I'll take a Strike King wire and head and skirt and build those baits to my specification. And there are different times and different ways. Sometimes I want a real long arm on top of it, so it's very, very weedless, and I can fish it slower. Sometimes I want to make them more compact. Sometimes I put a number 2 and a number 3 Colorado on them when I'm fishing for 12-inch fish like the Sabine River. I go smaller there. So don't be afraid to play with a spinnerbait. Figure out how you need to have those blades, the configuration of the blades, the colors of the blades, and how you can utilize it to bring it by the cover in a certain way, to manipulate it that way.
Talk a little bit more about the short arm, long arm spinnerbait. That's one that's always got me. Like, when's the time to throw a short versus a long? And I think you mentioned a little bit about being weedless there, and a little more apt to throw a long arm and heavier cover.
Absolutely. The short arm bait is one in which you're using basically on the fall. You're lifting and letting that bait fall, whether it's nighttime or you're bringing it by a piece of cover. One mistake most anglers make with a spinnerbait is when they throw it past a piece of cover and they reel it by that piece of cover, they just reel it in. You will get 10 times more bites if you'll reel it past that piece of cover and let it fall right beside that piece of cover. You'll get your arm jerked many a time. Now, with that short arm bait, that's a good bait to use that with. But a short arm bait is by far less weedless than a long arm bait. I prefer that longer top arm on a spinnerbait around wood and around bushes and things like that. And the short arm bait probably prevails better around rock.
Okay, fair enough. That was a good quick spinnerbait lesson. That
yeah, let's So Stephanie's had this question. This is very kind of specific. She says, what spinnerbait color, blade type, and size and weight in water with at least 6 foot of visibility for largemouth?
That's a good question. When a largemouth gets it, or when a bass in general gets a good view of that spinnerbait, you have to introduce speed. You have to introduce speed, and you have to bring that bait quickly across the area that that fish may be in, next to the piece of cover, the boat dock, down the windy point, whatever it is, so that fish doesn't get a good look at it. So I will tend to throw a 1/2 ounce to a 3/4 ounce with a number 4 and a 4.5 willow. The Strike King bait has a willow leaf blade called a razor blade. So the diameter of that blade is very thin, but it's long. You know, it's a thin blade, so in long, so I can retrieve it at high speed. The higher the speed that fish, if you can get a largemouth to react to a burning spinnerbait, this is going to be a post spawn through late fall. It's not applicable when water temperatures are cold or you have muddy water in it. But if you've got water clarity of 6 feet, you've got to bring it with speed. Then you have to have a day in which you have some wind. That wind breaks up the surface. Those fish don't get as good a look at it. And the wind always positions those fish. I burn a spinnerbait to cover a lot of water. And that's generally when I'm running main lake points, main lake bars, things like that. And I generally have a translucent colored skirt, something that's clear with sparkle in it, maybe a little blue in it, something like that. But I'm making long casts with 20-pound line, a high-speed reel. I'm using a hyperspeed at 9.5 to 1, cranking it as hard as I can go without breaking the surface and having a trailer hook on it. No plastic trailer at that point. I want to be able to reel that thing. It has to be straight coming back to me. Can't be laid over here or laid over there, bringing it back as fast as I can. And that's when a spinnerbait is really good in clean water with lots of visibility.
That was great. That was great.
And they'll jerk your arm off it when they hit it because you're.
Oh, when they hit it going the other way at Mach 1, it's the best thing. You know, that is my number one addiction to a technique. And if I get started on that in practice, I'm either going to catch their behinds or I'm going to get my butt handed to me. And at St. Clair last year, I got that bite going. I was using a Strike King spinnerbait that had 2 white blades and a coleslaw colored skirt on it. And when one of those smallmouth would hit it going the other way, I would just melt. I didn't get a big bite the first day. I caught 16 pounds. The next day I caught 20 pounds. And had I gotten one good bite, it would have been a perfect deal. Instead, I finished in the 80s, but I was 1 bite away from a top 50 finish.
You had fun though, didn't you?
Oh, good Lord. I had bruises on the side of my body, and my arms and my elbows hurt. But I'm telling you, that is my favorite bite in fishing, is a spinnerbait coming back to me at Mach 1 and a bass going Mach 2 the other direction.
Yeah. The best days are when you come home and you're sore because you know you went fishing. It's either your thumbs are all chewed up, you got bruised ribs, or your forearms
I always
are on
love
fire.
when you get I'm TMI here, but you get out of the shower and you look and you're like, where did that come from? And why is that sore?
That was that 5-pounder I hit.
That was the one. That was after 4 of them that I set the hook on. The rod slipped and it just gouged me right in the ribs.
Let's give something away here. We're going to share this screen. We're going to do the $25 Baitworks gift card giveaway. See if I can share this.
You're getting good at this.
I'm getting better at it.
You got to start sharing.
We got to start down and share. So to get in the entry, hashtag classic, and we're going to let this run for, I don't know, a couple of minutes, a little while. We'll just kind of let it run in the background, and we'll carry on. So Kentucky Lake, man, I've been impressed with the rebound. It's just putting out phenomenal weights. The smallmouth, it's amazing the size of the smallmouth. You're seeing a lot of like 4 to 5 pound smallmouth, and you're starting to see the bigger tournaments showing up. It's great for the lake. I love that, but I'm kind of concerned about, these tournaments starting to come back, because I feel like we've kind of talked about this in the past, but I feel like one of the reasons why, obviously the Asian carp was a detriment to the lake, but I also feel like the tournament pressure didn't help it either. So just talk a little bit about the health of Kentucky Lake, and is there any concern about, the tournaments, the national tournaments showing up over the next couple of years?
Kentucky Lake is a big part of the economy here. I'm glad the tournaments have come back in one aspect of it, it gives a boost to our economy. Lots of meals served, lots of gasoline bought, lots of spinnerbaits bought, lots of rooms at hotels, and that's good for the area. I'm really glad that the tournaments left the lake alone during this real critical time as far as the rebound of the lake. I think it did a lot of good. Our local anglers have become a lot more conservation minded. We have a Tuesday night tournament every night out of the moors. Welcome everybody to come and fish. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of guys just having a good time, catching a lot of bass. And we fish a 3-fish limit there. I went back and fished several of those this summer. And it's taken for 3 fish, 13, 14, 15 pounds sometimes. So the old lake is coming back. There's another group, Cast Ministries. They fish a 3-fish limit. So it makes things a heck of a lot more competitive and a lot more fun. And we're not keeping as many fish in the live well. So hats off to the folks that have made those decisions. It's gotten good, guys. Last fall, filming Mark Menendez Bass TV, I smallmouth fished one day and got probably 15, 18 bites that day. Smallmouth fished a second day and caught a couple in the 6-pound class that you'll see on the show. My camera guy, Baxter, the bait man, Kevin Baxter, he had to go to work that day. So he says, "Hey, I'll go get the car or the truck for you." And I said, "No, just going to work. I'm going to fish a little bit more and kind of pre-fish for tomorrow's show." And I went shallow with largemouth, and in 15 minutes, oh, good Lord, what I found. Well, the next day, Kevin comes back. We film the show. I caught 26 keepers in 3 hours.
Wow.
And it was not one particular cast I was making. It was a pattern. I caught them on a thunder cricket. You're going to see the show. I mean, we caught the snot out of them. Now, they weren't giants. The best 2 fish in that show were probably 3.5 pounders, but I caught a bunch of them. I had no idea that the largemouth population was as strong as it is. So for folks that are coming down here to go fishing now, if you jumped in the boat with me, you could expect to catch between 6 and 12 keepers a day, just about every day you want to fish. That's not bad bass fishing. Is it the same numbers that we once had here on Kentucky Lake where you catch 100 a day? No, it's not there, but it's proving that, there's still some good fishing here. I had one day last summer that my best friend and it took his son out, and I caught 5 that weighed 25, cranking a 10 XD. I haven't done that in 10 years, probably. So the tournaments are taking about a 4-pound average. 20 will put you in shapes to win, but it may take more than that. Murray State had an alumni tournament for their Murray State Bassmasters, and it took almost 26 pounds to win the other day. 5 smallmouth that weighed 26 pounds. That's world class, guys. That's as good as the St. Lawrence River. You're not catching as many as the St. Lawrence River, but that's as good as anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere. I'm telling you. Second was in the 20s, and heck, everybody in there had 5 that weighed 15. So we're experiencing a real resurgence of bass on Kentucky Lake. I really, really, really hope that the eelgrass that is in Gunnersville and in Pickwick makes it here to Kentucky Lake, because right now, with the numbers of fish, with the recruitment of fish that we have, the spawns that we've had in the last 2 or 3 years, if that eelgrass were to get established here, we'd have an absolute world-class fishery again like we had. So my hopes are good on that, but the lake has made a real resurgence and is doing really, really well.
How's the carp population?
Well, that's interesting you say that. I did a cypress tree planting last fall in December with in cooperation with the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, and AFCO gave a grant to the Kentucky Bass Nation and the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, and we planted 650 cypress trees in Cravens Bay on Barkley. And Adam Martin, our fisheries biologist, who is a really good guy, really reasonable person, as far as a biologist and a fisherman, and I've got a good friendship, and we were talking, and he said, "Mark, I can't tell you why, but we're not getting any Asian carp young of the year in any sampling that we're doing when we're shocking. Tennessee is not getting it either." And so those numbers of Asian carp have gone down mysteriously. The commercial fishermen continue to work hard to get everyone they can out of the lake and make a living doing that. but we don't have as many of them as we once did. You got to remember that whatever body of water you have has what's called a carrying capacity. And when that carrying capacity gets overfilled by a certain species of fish, other fish can't survive. The lake can only carry X amount of fish. And as that carrying capacity for those Asian carp, the Asian carp numbers have gone down. Our bait fish have come back. Our white bass have come back. White bass fishing on Kentucky Lake is as good as I ever remember. Caught plenty of rockfish over the winter. Our crappie fishing population is good. And the one nice thing that has come back that I haven't seen in many, many years are the sauger. We have a ton of 2.5 to 3.5 pound sauger. You can go out on any ledge, crank a 6XD out there and catch sauger as big as any walleye you want to catch, and they're delicious to eat too. So those are our minnow eating fish, and our bait fish have come back. So as the bait fish have come back, our minnow eaters, our bass, our white bass, our crappie, our sauger have come back as well. So we're in really good shape right now.
And they're showing up back on the ledges again?
Oh, there's a few fish showing up back out there. We still don't have the numbers of fish, so I don't think they've gotten as repopulated as what they once were. But that 25-pound sack that I caught, we had 26 keepers that day. Largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, and my best buddy David's son Jack caught a 3-pound meanmouth that day. It was just a magical day of fishing. And those fish stayed out there on that ledge for about 3 to 4 weeks. You could go back and catch some out there on that ledge.
Hey, we're going to give this about 1 more minute on the giveaway. It's #classic, all capitals. So about another minute and we will give this away. Aaron had an interesting comment about up north, they will actually close off an entire bay, no fishing. And it's like a spawning bay, just to give those fish a place to rest and do what they do naturally. That's a kind of a good idea.
Well, it could be. Fortunately, we've got enough numbers back in the lake. We've got a ton of 13 to 15-inch fish in the lake, and those fish are capable of spawning. So there have been a lot of studies done on spawning, people fishing during spawning, and it doesn't seem to hurt a year class of fish. So when you're up north like that in Canada and those places where they do have a season on them, they're protecting those fish because those fish are really, really old. Some of those fish up there, I feel like, are somewhere between 12, 15, 18 years old when they reach that 5 and 6 pound mark. So they're dinosaurs. So you really have to be cautious with them and be very careful with them and protect those fish because the growing season is so short up there. We're a little different down here. Our growing season is longer. Our waters are a little more fertile than some of those waters in the Great Lakes. I saw somebody put a comment there, go ahead and import some gobies down here and we get some big fish in here. Yeah, you're probably right, but we can't do those type things. But yeah, leaving those fish alone up north, I think that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, we already have one invasive species. Let's not introduce anymore.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we got more than that. Though we've got the 4 carp, and there's some more invasive species out there. But Mother Nature's doing a really good job of putting them in a little niche, so to speak, and hopefully she'll correct the whole thing.
I know the drum fishing is phenomenal on Kentucky Lake right now.
Well, that's interesting you say
Kentucky
that.
Lake redfish?
Yeah, well, those we call those Tennessee River smallmouths, what we call them.
Oh, okay.
It's interesting. I caught probably a 25-pound buffalo the other day while filming, and I'm going to close the show with that big old thing. I haven't seen a buffalo in a while, and some of those native species, like a buffalo, took it on the head as well when the Asian carp came in there and pushed their numbers down. So I was glad to see that old big buffalo and the drum are part of the ecosystem too. So it's getting better, and we're getting back to where we need to be.
Hey, William Hiller, congratulations. He's the winner of the $25 Baitworks gift card. Get a hold of me on Facebook at Gabe Montgomery Fishing, 10 Horse Monty, or on Instagram at 10 Horse Monty 6. Man, there's people that will actually fight you for those buffalo on the river. That's like that's a premium catch for a river fisherman. It
really is. They're good to eat. There's a lot of folks that love to eat them, and they're a tough fish to land. I promise you.
Yeah, we had a stellar day fishing drum down at Bull Shoals. We jumped in the boat with Del Coven, and we found just a big, huge school of drums
50
suspended.
fish,
Yeah, and they were all like 10 to 20 pounds. And
Oh,
man,
geez.
we were giggling like school children out there. He was kind of he's a guide down there. Of course, he's a buddy of ours, so he was just taking us out fishing. But he was at first he wasn't quite sure if we needed to leave the drum and go find some spots or smallmouth or largemouth.
30 minutes later, when we haven't stopped,
We're like, no,
laughing.
we're getting our lines tight. We were having fun. We were tripling up, and it was one of my most memorable days out in the water. It was nonstop for about an hour and a half, and we were sore.
I bet that boat smelled like hell the next day.
Oh, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did.
Yeah, I was hooking them and handing them to him. I just wanted to set the hook, and my forearms were on fire, but man, I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a blast.
Sounds like fun.
I bet we caught 20 drum.
At least. And we left. We left them biting.
Yeah.
We left a few floating too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We left them biting for sure.
You catch them in 60 foot of water.
Yeah, you got to roll them up.
You didn't fizz them?
No, we forgot. Well, let's this has been a very, very enlightening live stream. I've really enjoyed it. Let's before we go, I want to talk a little bit about a new bait. Well, it's a sort of new bait that came out with striking, the gravel dog. It's been a popular topic, and I would also like for you to touch on the new square bill that you and Mike have been working on too, a little bit, like maybe when we can expect that out. But the gravel dog, talk a little bit about the gravel dog.
The gravel dog, lightning struck when this bait was designed. It was Todd Castledine is the person that's responsible for it. I give him credit for that. But it's basically a 1.5 body with a Series 4 bill on it. It is not a rock crawler. It is not a wigglewort. In my opinion, it is a 1.5 body. And you know how that 1.5, you want that hunting action, in that 1.5. Well, this is one that does it either 8 feet deep or 10 feet deep. It has a big round, like the shape of your thumb bill on it. It deflects well. It is an 8-foot diver or a 10-foot diver on 12-pound test line. We have two different models. And I was lucky enough to steal a couple out of Mike Russell's shop when he wasn't looking and last fall. So I've had a lot of experience with this bait. And Mike came up with the amazing colors from Bag 5 Baits and Strike King. And he has this one called Bone Craw. Yeah. And kid, let me tell you, it's badass. That's all I can tell you about it.
He knocked it out of the park with the colors for sure.
Instantly started noticing 5-pound fish that I started catching with this bait. One of the Mark Menendez Bass TV shows we did at Lake X with that, and I caught the snot out of them on it until about a 5-pounder took it away from me, and then I put a fire craw on, and I caught them just as good with a fire craw. Those are my two favorite colors. This bait casts well. It deflects like you need a crankbait to do. And I caught a Dirty 30 filming with Tackle Warehouse. If y'all guys go to Tackle Warehouse and look at the vlogs there, they're up now on all of those fish that we caught in Texas on that little lake that we fished, Lake Buck. And when we did the gravel dog, I could see these fish on forward facing on big lay down trees, and it got interesting quick. Wow, what a great bait. I've caught them everywhere I've been this year with it. I hated to promote the damn thing because I had some and nobody else had them. But boy, let me tell you, what a great bait. I haven't been as excited about a crankbait that I've been able to tie on that Strike King has made since the XD series. That's how good it is. But it is a different bait. It hits a different depth zone. It's in that 8 and 10 foot zone, and you can see it really well on forward facing. It comes back. You can see it at the end of your cast all the way back. And boy, did I catch them this winter with it. I can't say enough about it. They're starting to really, really get easy to find. Walmart has some on an end cap, but they don't have bone craw. Whoever the buyer is at Walmart did not add bone craw to that end cap. But Tackle Warehouse has got them. Bait Works has got them. Land Big Fish has got them. They're pretty easy to come by now, and I highly recommend in this part of the world that bone craw. So Mike and I, Mike Russell and I, we work together on building a new series of crankbaits. It's called the Hardliner. Mike just got back from Costa Rica this weekend, and he walked up to me at the Bassmasters Classic and put the first production model in my hand. This is a flat-sided crankbait. The unique thing about this flat-side crankbait is it will dive up to 7 feet on 12-pound line. It has got this lazy old roll type action in cold water, but when you speed that thing up, it's got that real tight action that that a flat side needs. It's got buoyancy. It does have a rattle in it, which is different than most flat sides. Has a computer board, chip build board in it. And boy, I mean, it's a pretty deal. We've got 2 more coming in the series Mike and I are working on. We'll have a 3 to 5 foot diver, and then the final one we'll build will be somewhere between a 8 to 10 to 12 foot diver. This again, that one's called the Hardliner. It's going to have all of Mike's colors on it. We're working on colors right now. It's going to be money. Whoever wrote that on there, Robert, you're exactly right. Oh, that's Bob. He doesn't even count. I know Bob. It's going to be absolute money. But he's right. It is a really neat thing to be able to put your thoughts in there, collaborate with Mike, who has all of the skills to design this thing for center of gravity, for balance, the whole 9 yards. Castability. A flat side bait's hard to cast. I mean, that thing is flighty and it flies off. This thing casts like a bullet. Really, really excited about this. The rattle in it is not like the Hard Knock series that Strike King makes with that ultra loud rattle. It's a real subtle, quiet rattle. Really excited about this, and I'll be headed to Mike's here in a day or two to actually put that production model in Kentucky Lake and see how well they eat it. I look for nothing for the best of this bait. But the gravel dog, like I said, is really neat. And then we're coming with this line of baits. We're working really hard at Strike King to build new baits. We've been fortunate with the 1.5s and the XD series that we built some of the best crankbaits that fishermen have been lucky enough to fish with for years. But we're coming with new models, new ideas, new actions. We just don't want to knock off, other baits that are very popular. And to get my hands on one, I'm pretty proud of it. I won't lie to you. We worked really hard on this. It was very tricky to dial it in the way we wanted to dial it in. And the action of it is just awesome. So I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on a Hardliner.
Any like ETA? I mean, any idea when you think it might be?
I would say it'll probably be debuted at ICAST. I think we'll have that one ready for ICAST.
Okay,
fantastic.
But I know Mike brought a quantity back that we're gonna start playing with some colors and hopefully have some exclusive colors on this that you guys have never seen before, to really enhance this bait. I know Mike is beaming about it. He worked his butt off. When you get somebody as particular as me, I say, Mike, man, we maybe ought to change that bill angle 1 degree. And you can just see him go, oh boy, here we go again. Or I'd say, Mike, let's change this line tie a little bit. And the blue lights come on in the background, in Mike's eyes. I was hard on him, but golly, he has such a good knowledge how to build a bait. He really knocked this thing out of the park.
And the colors are going to be on point too.
No, they're going to be stupid, dude.
Yeah,
they're going to be stupid. You've got to have a sexy shad in there. That's a Strike King staple. We're going to have some chartreuses in there. We're going to have some really great crawfishes in there. Going to try to have some pretty cool bluegill colors in there. We're going to have a mix of everything, but we're going to really make this thing stand out. It's going to be beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up, man. Mark, I really, really appreciate you hanging out and spending the time talking about the forward-facing sonar. It's good to get all the different perspectives, and you're definitely one of those people that has the kind of the behind-the-scene perspective from some of your fellow anglers. They'll talk amongst themselves, but they may be hesitant about bringing it out. So it's good to know that we've kind of got a feel of what a lot of the veterans are talking about, and I certainly hope that there'll be some compromise or something we can all agree on down the road, because I've said this before in some of my videos. this is bass fishing, guys. I mean, this is supposed to be fun. This is not supposed to be polarizing. If we want politics, we can turn on CNN and Fox, but we're supposed to be out on the water, enjoying ourselves. It's on the water therapy, escaping from the things and the monotony of life and work. And it's, to me, this new technology has it's opened eyes on what the fish are doing, but it's also caused a lot of bickering and a lot of negativity in something that's supposed to be positive. It's supposed to be meditative. It's supposed to be a release. We're supposed to be having fun. And I hope that as we talk about it, one thing that we all need to do as humans, as Americans, as wherever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your background is, you have to talk. You have to discuss things. You can't become closed-minded. The way you are able to understand what you perceive as the opposite of you is by having a conversation, a civil conversation about whatever it is. And that's how we grow as people. And fishing is no different than anything else. And this forward-facing sonar deal has definitely been the most polarizing thing that's come along in my lifetime. And I'm glad we're able to have conversations about it. And I really thank you for all that you've done, your insight, your years on the Bassmaster Elite Trail. And I'm hoping you'll come back sometime down the road and we can have another good conversation.
Well, I will. And thank you for having me. And I hope I was very diplomatic on the way I went about trying to explain my feelings about it. I think you're dead right on the polarization of what's going on in the world right now. Fishing is an outlet. Fishing is a way that you can spend time with your kids, your family, your grandpa, your grandma, everybody. And it has been such a soothing part of my life to be able to put that cell phone away and just be nice, just like the Philip said there, just be nice. It's fishing is a gift that we all love. And the good thing, whether you have forward facing or not, you can still go out there and catch fish and have fun and enjoy time with your family. That's great. And that's what it's all about to me. And I hope that we can find some kind of compromise in the tournament part of this. You know, I broke my boat in February and I'm running down the lake. And what I do, guys, is I leave Kentucky Dam Marine and I run in and out of every bay, all the way to Blood River, to Wildcat Creek, and then all the way back up. And at that point, I've put 4 hours of runtime on my motor. It was a warm day, and it was right before that big cold snap. And I saw probably 100 boats out there. Every boat that I could visually get close enough to see had forward facing on it. Most of those guys were crappie fishing, but every boat out there had it. So it's here. It's not going away, but hopefully we can find a way to keep our competition pure, because that's what fishing can be. It needs to be pure in my mind. Pure fishing is the best way to be and the best way to go about it, and expand your mind. Try to visualize what that fish is doing with your mind and try to make him do something that he doesn't want to do. That's what fishing is to me. Make that fish react to something I've made a bait do. And if I catch that fish, then I feel like I'm doing my job. So anyway, I'm going to stay on it. I'm going to stay after it. Chase Anderson from Bass asked me to put a proposal together. I will be doing that this week and sending that to him on what I think is the best compromise for all, whether it's 2 tournaments with, 2 tournaments without, or limitation on the amount of graphs you can have, whatever it is. I'll try to put the most balanced and fair aspect out there so that the companies can survive, so that the organization can survive, and the professional angler can survive as well. So I'll work hard on it, I promise.
That's great. I know you will. I got confidence in you and the guys that you're working with, and it'll be the fairest and inclusive as it can be. And
absolutely. But anyway, I got people buzzing me saying it's past my bedtime.
All right. Everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. We do this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Love to see you next week. And that is it. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.